Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Kurt Beckett. I'm chair of the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council here for Washington State. And want to welcome you all this evening, especially those of you who have taken your time to join us here this evening. I certainly want to thank those who are online as well. Other members of our council who will be introduced here shortly are also online in addition to members of the public. So again, welcome. And this is the first of two meetings tonight. We're beginning this evening with the public informational meeting as required by state law. The purpose of the first meeting is to provide an overview of the FSEC review process and in particular, the overview of the project itself, the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project. We will then take public comment from our both in-room and online attendees, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there. On timing and process, it is about 3 minutes per person, just a heads up. And again, we'll take online comments as well. Please know that the purpose of tonight's meeting is really to both, again, begin socializing the details of the project with the public, but also as you digest that this evening, if you have comments of what FSEC council as well as staff should consider in the review of the application, whether that's a question you think that needs to be answered or a perspective that you want to share, that's the purpose of tonight's public comment, is to capture those things. Please know as we start this process, ultimately there are many different comment periods along the way that we won't spend a lot of time on tonight, but by no means is this kind of the only time that you'll have a chance to understand the project and provide your input. But it is an important part so that we capture any initial thoughts you may have as we then go further into the official process. The second meeting, which will begin immediately after our public comment concludes, and that is specifically about the land use consistency of the project, and in this case, how that project compares to land use code in Skamania County. And so there'll be a brief presentation on that, and then comments will be taken on the land use issue only during the land use consistency hearing. So with that, let me thank you all again for participating, and if Ms. Grantham would please call the roll.
Certainly, Chair. Department of Commerce.
Hi, Elizabeth Osborne, present.
Hi, Elizabeth Osborne, present.
Department of Ecology.
Blake Nelson, present.
Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Nate Pamplin, present virtually.
Department of Natural Resources.
Maverick Ryan, present virtually.
Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Brian Ryberick, present virtually from the UTC FSEC offices in Lacey, Washington.
Thank you. Moving on to our local government for this project in Skamania County, Asaleki.
Yeah, Asaleki online.
ASA, thank you. Moving on to Assistant Attorney General John Thompson.
I am present online.
Administrative Law Judge Russell Mikow.
Present online.
For council staff here, I'm going to call those who are anticipated to possibly speak tonight. Sonia Bumpus.
Here.
Amy Hofkemeyer.
Present.
Maria Belkina.
Present.
Lance Caputo.
Present.
Carl Hulapa. And Lisa McLean.
Present. Online.
Thank you. And is there anyone here for the Council for the Environment?
Yes, Sarah Reineveld is here.
Thank you, Chair. There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask our applicant team to introduce themselves briefly, and as a heads up to our Council on the Environment, I was going to next call on you to provide just a brief word of the role of the Council of Environment, and then I would turn this soon to Sonia Bumpus, our Director of FSEC, that will begin our staff presentation for the FSEC process. So heads up on that, Council for the Environment, and first over to our applicant to brief introductions.
My name is Chris Hawker with Cascade Renewable Transmission. With me at the desk here is Susan Brown, a colleague, and we have other folks in the audience representing our development partners and our consultant, HDR. So there's probably 5 or 6 who will be happy to answer questions, I guess, beforehand, obviously, and afterwards if there are any.
Thank you. Councilor Reineveld?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Sarah Reineveld, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Council for the Environment, Yuri Karol, who has been assigned to this project but had a conflict this evening. Pursuant to RCW 80.50.080, when the council receives a site application, the Attorney General Nick Brown appoints an Assistant Attorney General to serve as counsel for the environment. And the purpose of counsel for the environment per the statute is to represent the public and its interests in protecting the quality of the environment throughout the siting process. And CFE, or Council for the Environment, fully participates throughout that process. So thank you for the opportunity for a brief introduction. Again, Yuri Kroll has been assigned to this project and should be present tomorrow evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the overview. And with that, let me pass this to Director Bumpus to kick us off on the FSEC overview process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Beckett. As Chair Beckett said, my name is Sonia Bumpus. I am the Executive Director of the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, or FSEC as we say. Wanted to first say thank you for being here tonight. We really welcome your attendance and participation. It means a lot to us. We know everybody's busy, and so you taking the time to come out and meet us, we really appreciate that. A couple of remarks before we get started with the PowerPoint presentation that FSEC staff will provide about our process. And Chair Beckett talked about this a little bit already. The reason that we're here tonight is to hear from you about this application that was filed with FSEC. It's also to hold the land use consistency hearing that's going to follow this public informational hearing. When FSEC receives an application for site certification, when someone wants to build an energy facility that falls under FSEC jurisdiction, FSEC's required to hold a public informational hearing and take comment on the application. And then we also have to do a land use consistency hearing. But that's not all there is to the process. There's other steps that follow that you'll hear about in the PowerPoint presentation. They include the environmental review under the State Environmental Policy Act. And if the project doesn't qualify for what we call expedited processing, then FSEC is required to also hold an adjudicative hearing. So there's a lot of steps. The reason I'm telling you all this right now, even though you're going to get a nutshell presentation of it shortly, is because there are a lot of steps ahead of us in terms of engaging with FSEC and providing input into the process. And they all have these different parts of the process, all serve a different role. Tonight, when you come up and you talk with us about this application, what it's going to do is it's going to help inform our review of the application that was just filed. And so as the SEPA responsible official of FSEC, I'm going to be looking at those comments to help inform what I'm looking at when I'm interpreting the information in the application. And what we hope to do is get to a point where we consider the application to be complete enough to be able to move towards the next part of the process. So with that being said, I encourage you to also sign up with us, if you haven't already, for notifications about the project and FSEC activities. Because moving forward from here, FSEC will be talking with the council at our monthly council meetings. They're held on the third Wednesday of each month, and there'll be a project update about this specific application at each one of those meetings. So it's a good way to stay apprised as to what's developing with the application review, public meetings that we're planning for the future parts of the process. So thank you for coming out, and I am now going to pass this over to our siting specialists so that they can introduce themselves and start the presentation.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you all for coming to participate this evening. My name is Maria Belkina. I'm the lead site specialist for FSEC for this project, and I would like to introduce my colleague, Lance Caputa. He will be giving a short presentation on the FSEC process for those who are unfamiliar with our agency.
Thank you, Maria. As Maria mentioned, my name is Lance Caputo. I've been assigned to assist Maria. She's the lead siting specialist on this project. And I am going to go through a very, hopefully brief overview of the agency and our process. A little bit about the history of the FSEC agency. FSEC was created in 1970 for the siting of thermal power plants. The intent was to create a one-stop permitting agency for large energy facilities. FSEC is comprised of state and local government members who review each application before voting to make a council recommendation to the governor. If recommending approval, the package to the governor includes a draft site certification agreement, or what we call a CA, which defines all pre-construction, construction, and operation plans. If approved by the governor's office, the decision preempts all other state or local regulations. FSEC is comprised of members from several different state-level agencies. The chairperson is appointed by the governor, and there are standing members from 5 other agencies appointed by those agencies to sit on the council. The current council is made up of Chairman Kirk Beckett, Blake Nelson from the Department of Ecology, Nate Pamphlin from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Elizabeth Osborne from the Department of Commerce, Maverick Ryan from the Department of Natural Resources, and Brian Rybaric from the Utilities and Transportation Commission. There are additional agencies that may elect to appoint a council member during the review of a new application. These agencies are the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Health, and the Military Department. The local county shall also appoint a council member for the review of a new application. For Skamania County, Asa Lackey, if I said your name correctly, sir, is the county representative. If a proposal project is located at a port, the port may also appoint a non-voting member. Multiple energy generation facilities fall under FSEC's jurisdiction. Some projects, such as thermal power plants with less than 350 megawatts and nuclear generation for the purpose of generating electricity, are required to be sited through FSEC, while others, such as wind, solar, green hydrogen, storage, or clean energy manufacturing, can opt in our process at any size. Transmission lines greater than 115 kilovolts can also opt in, while lines greater than 500 kilovolts alternating current or 300 kilovolts direct current are required. Thresholds for pipelines and refineries that may be sited through FSEC are found in the Revised Codes of Washington, or RCW 8050.060. Multiple energy generation. Thank you. Yeah, okay, this is my first mistake. Somebody keep track for me. I appreciate how many mistakes I make. Here is a map of the facilities that are certified or have been or have applied for certification under FSEC's jurisdiction. You can see marked in green there are 7 operating facilities, including 2 natural gas facilities, 1 nuclear facility, 2 solar facilities, and 2 wind facilities. The blue marks indicate the 4 additional facilities that are approved but are not yet constructed. The clear circle is the one facility in the process of being decommissioned. FSEC is currently reviewing 7 projects marked by yellow, including this Cascade Renewable Transmission Project. Here is a flow chart showing the general process an applicant will go through when they submit an application to FSEC. And I know it looks daunting, but please bear with us. There are yellow boxes on the chart that indicate specific milestones in the process where the council and staff seek public input. You can see that there are multiple processes that happen concurrently when FSEC is reviewing an application. The permitting process outlined across the top row involves identifying and preparing applicable environmental permits. The land use and adjudicative process runs through the middle. In the State Environmental Policy Act, or what we call SEPA, process is shown along the bottom. All these processes ultimately feed into the council's recommendation made to the governor. Where an adjudication is required following the land use consistency hearing, an order is issued to commence proceedings and initiate intervention. Here, members wishing to must identify themselves and their issues in writing. There are pre-hearing conferences through which parties are granted intervention status and issues are identified. Exhibits and testimony are provided and cross-examination is conducted. After this, the council looks at all the information in the adjudication record and deliberates. Finally, the council develops an order establishing their findings of fact and conclusions of law from the information provided throughout these proceedings. For every proposed project, a SEPA review is performed. When a determination of significance and a decision to prepare an environmental impact statement, or what we call an EIS, is made, public comments are taken on the scope of the EIS. After public comment for scoping, the SEPA responsible official, here our agency director Sonia Bumpus, determines the scope of the EIS. A draft EIS is prepared and issued with a minimum 30-day public comment period, after which the final EIS is prepared and released. In some instances, a determination of non-significance, or a DNS, or a mitigated determination of non-significance, an MDNS, is issued. If the SEPA responsible official determines that a project meets the criteria of a DNS or MDNS, an EIS is not required. This is an alphabet we have here going. In this process, determination is noticed to the public, and there is a minimum 15-day public comment period on a mitigated determination of non-significance, while the determination of significance requires no comment period. Following the conclusion of these separate avenues of application review, the council develops its recommendation to the governor, tying together the information brought forth throughout the entire application review process. If a project is issued a mitigated determination of non-significance and received a determination of land use consistency, it may qualify for an expedited review process. To be considered for expedited processing, an applicant must make the request in writing. If the project meets the 2 aforementioned criteria for land use consistency and an MDNS, the council can grant expedited process review. In this expedited process, the adjudication step is not required and an environmental impact statement is not prepared. Applications granted expedited processing do hold an additional public hearing prior to the council's recommendation to hear any conditions that may be considered to impose on the project, similar to a conditional use process hearing. The council prepares their recommendations to the governor in an expedited time frame under this process. Now, FSEC is also the issuing agency for any applicable state and local governmental permits a facility may require, including water quality and air quality permits as they may apply. The permits are identified in the final package with the Council's recommendation to the Governor. If an application is approved by the Governor, FSEC then has oversight of the environmental compliance for the life of the facility through decommissioning. FSEC has standing contracts with applicable state agencies that assist in monitoring and enforcement of conditions either in the site certification agreement, identified permits, or the environmental impact statement, or the mitigated determination of non-significance. FSEC's enforcement authority extends to the issuance of any penalties that may apply. At the conclusion of the Council's review of an application, a recommendation is made to the Governor to either approve or reject the application. This initiates a 60-day window within which the Governor will then either approve the application, reject the application, or remand the application back to the Council for reconsideration. Any application that is rejected by the Governor is a final decision on that application. As previously mentioned, FSEC oversees facilities under its jurisdiction through decommissioning. Prior to the start of construction of approved projects, an initial site restoration plan is required. Then at the end of the life expectancy of the facility prior to the start of decommissioning, a detailed site restoration plan is required. These plans must be reviewed and approved by the Council. The project must also provide financial assurance for the decommissioning in the event that the project is no longer able to complete the process. Assuming the project decommissions while still under full control of the developer, these costs would be paid by the certificate holder directly. And before I conclude with the presentation, I'd like to mention that our partners in the project are representing the state of Oregon, the senior siting analyst with the Oregon Department of Energy and the Energy Facility Siting Council is Christopher Clark. He's here tonight. So if you have questions about the Oregon half of the project, the gentleman over there with the beard, he's available for you. So thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time and interest in the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project. Our work is closely coordinated with the Oregon Department of Energy and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, ensuring that both states and federal agencies have aligned in the environmental and permitting process. This wraps up my presentation for the evening, but before I end, I'd like to remind everyone how they may submit comments for this project. You may send in written comments by email to comments@fsec.wa.gov, by postal mail to our office at 621 Woodland Square Loop, P.O. Box 43172, Olympia, Washington, or by phone at 360-664-1345. When FSEC is in an active comment period associated with a specific milestone, comments may also be submitted to our online comment database at comments.fsec.wa.gov. All comments received, regardless of timing or method of delivery, will be saved with the project record and available to the Council and staff for review. Thank you for bearing with me. And now turn it back over to Maria. Oh, this is Sonia Bumpus, the director.
Thank you, Lance. Really appreciate it. Just a couple of things. And Lance went over the how to submit comments, so I won't go back over that, other than just to say, so using an example from the presentation, Lance talked about if we were to prepare an EIS, we would make a determination of significance. And he also mentioned that there's no comment no public comment period required when I issue a determination of significance. However, there's this part of SEPA called scoping that we're required to do. So if we were going to make a determination of significance, we would need to go through a scoping period. And there's a comment period that we're required to do. And what that comment period does is it gives us a chance to hear from you as far as what you think needs to be analyzed or considered in that environmental impact statement. And so that is exactly what FSEC would call a comment period. So if you're on that mailing list that I talked about earlier, you would get noticed, hey, FSEC is going to be starting scoping. We've issued a determination of significance, and we're inviting you to provide comments to us about the scope of the environmental impact statement. So just to give you a real world example of one of those milestones that Lance highlighted in his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you all. As we move to the PowerPoint, let me make a brief word, a PowerPoint from the applicants. I think if we can cue that up, we will move to the project overview, which is one of the most critical parts tonight, in addition to your input. I did want to also highlight again Commissioner Leckie, Asa Leckie, who is serving on this project council for the Cascade Renewable transmission project. Always appreciate busy officials that are also now dual hatting and providing their presence on behalf of Skamania County on the project council. So Commissioner, we welcome you to this process and appreciate your making time for it and those who you represent. Also wanted to echo Lance's comments of highlighting our partner from the Department of Energy in Oregon. That's FSEC with one E, and we're FSEC with two E's. Is one way to keep that clear, so to speak. So with that, over to you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to FSEC and particularly to the folks who turned out tonight. We appreciate the interest. My name is Chris Hocker. The company I work for is called PowerBridge. My colleague Susan Brown is next to me, and like I said before, we had some project representatives throughout the audience here who'd be happy to answer informal questions. The project that we're going to describe is innovative in the sense that it's a technology that has not been used widely in the Pacific Northwest, but it is a technology that has been used on several occasions throughout the world. And the company I work for, PowerBridge, has actually developed and built and currently operates 2 such projects involving underwater electric transmission. Before I go any further, I do want to acknowledge that we're well aware of the long-standing, thousands of years of occupancy by indigenous peoples of the region, and we are working very diligently to engage with tribes and understand their concerns. So, you know, I wanted to make sure that you knew that we were very much appreciative of that, and it's an ongoing effort that's been going on for several years. Yeah, thank you. So I hopefully won't take too much time, but I do want to give you a pretty thorough overview. The project begins in the Dalles, Oregon, and ends in the Rivergate section of Portland. What's next? It is about 100 miles in length, of which about 80 is underwater. And when we say underwater, we mean buried 10 to 15 feet below the sediment of the river. It's not lying on the bottom of the river. It avoids negative impacts associated with overhead transmission lines. It will probably take about 3.5 years to build. The installation of the cable underwater would only occur during winter months to avoid sensitive periods for migration and spawning of fish. And like I said before, this is a technology that has been in use for quite some time and continues to be in use around the world. Next. Just as sort of a backdrop, a few years ago, both states, Washington and Oregon, passed legislation that mandated a sort of a stair-step process of achieving 100% clean energy in their states. And the first milestone under those mandates actually occurs in 2030. And then it ratchets up from there. So it is a state mandate to move to clean energy. The issue, however, is that most of the clean energy resources exist east of the Cascades, and most of the load, the people who actually use the power, is west of the Cascades. So the dilemma is, how do you get enough transmission to move the energy from east to the west? Next. Right now in the region, Washington and Oregon, the existing transmission system is very much constrained. It's at its limit. Not every single hour of every day, but at peak periods, the transmission system is under great constraint. And this isn't just us saying this. It's something that has been more and more widely acknowledged throughout the region, as you can see by some of the headlines shown here. So there's very little available east to west transmission capacity. There's a transmission grid that was built in the 60s and 70s, primarily by BPA, putting in new overhead high-capacity transmission lines is very challenging. There have been a couple of efforts to do that that have failed. And so we have this, as I said, highly constrained transmission system that needs to be addressed one way or the other. Next. Now, I realize this is not the most intuitive slide, but I'm showing it because it illustrates how energy flows and how the project, even though it begins in Oregon and it terminates in Oregon, really doesn't, it's irrespective of geography. And the benefits to Washington are every bit as evident as the benefits to Oregon. The blue kind of semicircles illustrate the current main energy flows from east of the Cascades to the west. The little circles are planned in very early stage planning that BPA and others are thinking of building. And the reason they need to build those improvements in the red and the black circles and the blue circles is because the system works as a whole. So if you're bringing energy from sources in the east, you don't just string a line and from point A to point B. Everything you do has an impact on the existing system. So that if you bring it over to a point, then that's going to affect how the other parts of the system need to be upgraded to make it all work. Otherwise, all you're doing is moving constraints. Our project, which is the green line, bypasses those constraints by going directly from the Big Eddy substation in the Dalles to the load center in Greater Portland. From there, it then escapes the constraints and is able to flow north and south. So by eliminating, or I should say reducing, because it's not the only solution, by reducing those constraints, you benefit the whole system in both states. Go ahead. So as we said, we've managed to draw a certain amount of attention as we've been filing permits and dealing with folks on both sides of the river. We are part of the needed solution, which is really probably 3, 4, at least 1,000 megawatts worth of transmission capacity. What we propose is 1,100 megawatts. So it's a significant portion of meeting the constraints. It's not the only solution, but it's one that we know will work, can be implemented. So it's hard to depict a 100-mile transmission line, but this is essentially the overview of the project that, like I said, begins in the Dalles. And by the way, that complex, if you're familiar with it, is called the Star Complex, is a very large BPA set of facilities, including a large substation called Big Eddy. And the transmission that moves east from, further east into the Dalles, into Star, is not constrained. The constrained area is basically the 100 miles between Big Eddy and here. So the green is the underwater portion. The yellow is the on-land portion. As you can see, the only on-land portion affecting this specific local area is the bypass of the Bonneville Dam, which we're going to show there. There we go. So the idea would be to take the cable out of the river and land it in Stevenson. The landing is affected by a technology called horizontal directional drill. So there is no trenching involved in bringing it from water to land. It's done with a drill. Conduits are pulled through. The depth of the drill can be 40, 50 feet below the ground surface. It comes back up onto land, and then the cable is trenched, and it's conventional trenching about 4 feet deep, as I'm sure we're all familiar with for cables and pipelines and things like that, water lines, that kind of thing. It primarily follows State Route 14. That little jog on Ashes Lake Road is at the suggestion of the Washington DOT, Department of Transportation. It proceeds around the dam, primarily on Route 14 till you get onto federal government property over by the dam, over to where you see the kind of purple slash there, which is the other horizontal directional drill that gets it back into the water and on down toward the Portland area. Just for context, these are the Oregon land routes. Each is about 5 miles. Because this is a direct current or DC line, it requires conversion from the alternating current, which is what the system we are primarily familiar with. It's converted to DC because that makes it controllable and doesn't require a lot of mechanical systems along the way. It can be transported long distance underwater. So it's converted from AC to DC at Big Eddy. It continues as a DC line to, if you look at the left figure, to a converter station in the Rivergate industrial area in Portland. It then is converted to AC, back into AC power, proceeds underground for 2-3 miles to the Willamette. Once again, there's a horizontal directional drill that goes under the Willamette and comes up on the existing Harborton substation, which is owned by Portland General. So why are we doing this underwater? Well, we've already talked about the difficulties of siting overhead transmission lines, but in developing this project, we considered a number of alternatives to see if there was any possible alternative path or combination of paths that might be preferable to using the river. There is no available path through the gorge or densely populated areas without unacceptable impacts. If you can imagine running an overhead power line through the gorge, it seems rather unlikely. We are asked occasionally, well, why don't you just bury it in I-84? Because it's not permitted, is the answer. The state DOT and the Federal Highway Administration does not allow for that kind of burial for that kind of length. They make occasional exceptions for very short lengths, but for a 100-mile route, never mind that it probably isn't constructible. Even if it were, they wouldn't permit it. Same with State Route 14 with a few exceptions. If you were to try to use State Route 14 for the entire length, it would be unconstructible because of various natural and man-made features, bridges, tunnels, rock slides. We counted over 300 potential obstacles, which if you had 1,000 years, you might be able to figure them all out, but there's no contractor that in the world who would do that. We will say that for the small stretch of State Route 14 that bypasses the dam, that is a constructible route. And as I said, we've been consulting with the DOT to understand, what we need to do in order to do that. Same is true for railroad rights-of-way on either side of the river, where in many cases they're so constrained that you basically can't do it. And I doubt if the railroads would be happy about shutting down their operation while we figured out how to put the trench in the line. So now we get to describing the project itself. This is an illustration. It's not an illustration, it's the real deal. But it's to show you what the cable looks like. If you look at the bottom left figure, the cable is installed in a bundle that is about 12 inches in diameter. So this is a slice of an actual cable, not a replica or a facsimile or to scale or anything like that. It's also quite heavy. So, and as you can see, it's about the size of an iPhone. The two cables are bundled together with one or two fiber optic cables. The point of the fiber optic is not commercial enterprise. It's to effect communication between the two converter stations. And it's used, for instance, to detect if there's a problem at either converter station. It's all internal to the project. The construction itself, and if you look at the right-hand figure, this is a depiction of a process that uses a machine called a hydroplow or a jet plow that is pulled by a barge or a ship very, very slowly. In a really good day, you can make about 1.5 miles. Can we go back for a second? Yeah, there we go. The left hand shows the cable bundle being paid off the back of the vessel. This is actually from our Neptune project that we built. And so going back to the other figure, it is slowly lowered in a bundle into the a machinery called a hydroplow. The hydroplow has an adjustable blade, and most importantly, the blade includes a number of high-pressure water jets. So you're not digging a trench, you're basically jetting a trench that emulsifies the sediment. The cable then sort of simultaneously lays into the trench, and about 75% of the sediment that rises up within the trench then settles back down over the cable. So it's like one slow, continuous process. There's no mechanical dredging, there's no massive scar on the riverbed. The trench itself is perhaps 2 feet wide to accommodate a 12-inch diameter cable bundle. As we said before, the in-water portion of the project is only allowed during what's called work windows by the environmental agencies, which is typically in the winter months, November through February, March, and specified to avoid, as I said, spawning and migration of fish species. We talked about converter stations. This is really the only above ground facilities involved in the project. This particular photo is of a converter station in San Francisco. About 15 years ago, a project very similar to this was built with a converter station in San Francisco, a converter station in Pittsburgh, California, which is in the East Bay, if you're familiar with it. And then the cable runs under the San Francisco Bay to the converter station here in San Francisco. A converter station property requirement is about 5 acres. And it is quite similar to the type of substation that you may see pretty much anywhere, including, for instance, the Star Complex or the Harborton substation that we referred to. Permits, approvals, studies. We're under the jurisdiction of really 3 major entities. One of them is FSEC here in Washington. One of them is FSEC, without the second E, in Oregon. And the other is the Army Corps of Engineers. So we need to get approvals of all 3 of those entities. That is a complex process, although we have been through that before with our projects on the East Coast between New York and New Jersey, where we also had 2 state jurisdictions and the Army Corps overseeing. So it is complex to get a coordinated review. It's something that I know that both FSECs and the Corps are focusing on in order to have a review that can be as coordinated as possible, but again, still observing the interests of the various states and of the federal waterway. We also need interconnection agreements with the Bonneville Power Administration and Portland General Electric. That's part of the process. We have virtually no private property involved where the cable is. It's primarily on public land. And there have been already a large number of very significant studies that we have conducted, biological assessments, sediment analysis, sediment transport. In other words, to say, well, okay, if you're plowing the sediment, where does it go? Does it travel down the river? Does it stir up anything you don't want to travel? That kind of thing. We've conducted a geophysical survey of the river bottom and done a lot of modeling for things like magnetic fields and temperature. The point being that even though we showed you earlier on what looked like just a line on a piece of paper, in fact, it's been cited very carefully. For instance, to get as close to the middle of the river as possible, but to avoid the navigation channel where possible. We want to get away from the shoreline because of the cultural resources aspect near the historic shoreline. We have mapped the river bottom to know where there are areas of, let's say, solid rock or steep side slopes where you can't run a jet plow. So really, the siting has been anything but random. It's been pretty careful in terms, and to avoid habitat areas, foraging areas for fish, that kind of thing. So the permitting update, I don't need to go through this in detail, but we have obviously submitted our application to Washington FSEC. We are in the process of completing our siting application for Oregon FSEC. There are actually a couple of Army Corps of Engineers permits that are required, Section 408, Section 404. We have filed those. Those are under review. And a very, very important part of the process from the Corps, as well as from the states, is consultation with the various native tribes. And so that consultation process, which is called Section 106, has been underway. And as I said before, we are trying as best we can and have been able to engage with a number of the tribes. It's really the federal government's responsibility to lead that consultation process. But we are supporting that, and it's perfectly permissible for us to engage ourselves as long as it's done in coordination with the 106 process. We also hold what are called agency coordination meetings periodically when we have something to say, when we have performed a study that we think might be interesting to the agencies or the tribes. So every so often, we've got one coming up next month. And these are voluntary. They're not part of the process. They're outside the process. But we've had very good response from the agencies and the tribes who sit in and learn about where we are in our studies and what we have found. We do expect that the project during construction will and can result in a variety of benefits, including quite a few construction jobs during the 3.5-year process. We have done this before, as I keep saying, and we understand that we can't just come in, run a line, go away without partnering with the communities that are affected, even if the effect isn't all that great. So we're open to any sort of discussions with the localities where there may be an impact or an effect to look for ways to partner or benefits that we can help provide. So with that, just to mention some of our development team, PowerBridge has done this before within the last 20 years or so on the East Coast. Sun 2O Partners is primarily a solar developer that was out here, about 6-7 years ago, trying to see if there were opportunities to site a solar farm east of the Cascades, and discovered very quickly that the opportunity is only as good as the transmission that will get it to the people who will actually use the energy. And so they came to us, knowing that, we were in this kind of business, and asked us if we would take a look and see if this was something that we think is feasible. NextEra Transmission, and we have a couple of NextEra partners here tonight, is the leading publicly traded utility and renewables developer. And they are the ones that now own and operate the Transbay Cable project, which is the one I talked about in San Francisco. Next slide, and I won't belabor this, is just an illustration of the similar marine transmission that has happened throughout the world, and there's more being built that even beyond this particular listing. Our projects include, they're called Neptune and Hudson. Neptune has been running successfully for 20 years, or almost 20 years, 18 years. And it's similar to this. It runs primarily underwater for about 50 miles down part of a river and into the Atlantic Ocean. It runs almost exactly 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and supplies about 25% of all the energy use, electric power use on Long Island. The Hudson project similarly connects two power grids, one in New Jersey, one in New York, and it goes down the Hudson River, buried beneath the Hudson River, and serves the government agencies in New York City. So just to conclude, as I keep saying, we are experienced at this. We understand the need to be respectful, to be open, to be transparent, and to try to partner with the communities that we may affect. And that's what we're trying to do. And always happy to answer any questions, not just here. We do have a website, of course, CascadeTransmission.com. There's a mechanism where you can send us questions, which we're happy to answer, and we welcome that. So with that, I can turn it over to Chair Beckett. Thank you.
Thank you for the thorough overview. And with that, we will move into our public comment portion of this meeting. And Ms. Grantham will help me know who has signed up. If you haven't signed up, you're welcome to, I think, over here at this table, and ultimately I'll certainly call on you if you raise your hand, and would just ask that you state your name for the record if you haven't already signed up. So with that, let me turn this, I believe, to Ms. Grantham to let us know our first speaker. Again, we are trying to limit comments tonight to 3 minutes, and welcome your comments. If you do have questions that you would like to note that be included for the record, we will capture those questions to the degree that we can answer some tonight without cutting off other people who want to speak. I will consider that, but ultimately we follow a rule of 3 minutes per person here. So with that, Ms. Grantham.
Certainly, Chair. The first speaker that I have signed up is Fred Grief.
Welcome, sir. And if you would, sir, please, if you might stand just a little closer to the mic. I don't know if we can quite capture you for our online audience, as well as the other council members who are here to hear your testimony. So,
thank you for this opportunity. For me, one of the most important things with this environmental impact statement, which I strongly believe is needed and will be required, is the no action alternative. I think there's many reasons why this project should not go forward. And I've just found out about it. I will be submitting a lot more comments besides this tonight. But You mentioned there's magnetic field and temperature studies, and there's an awful lot of recreation in this river. Fishing, windsurfing, swimming. There's not a lot of lakes near the river. This is where the people here live and recreate. And there's things such as EMFs. I think we need to do a full study of what are the impacts of people right in the proximity of that cable for long periods of time. Or anyway, so let's just say magnetic, electric, EMFs, all that type of thing really does need to be closely looked at. Another thing would be, so anyway, there's going to be all kinds of recreation impacts. People might not want to be near those cables. We might lose our windsurfing on the river. There may be other pathways besides the gorge. The gorge is the shoreline of the greatest significance in this whole Northwest region. I know Ecology's shoreline program will really be interested in, before they permit this, and I believe you should talk to the scientists there as to what they think the impacts on the fish and all the different water quality impacts associated with such disruption to the most important shoreline of statewide significance. There may be other ways to go from east-west besides the gorge. There may be other pathways through the mountains, through railroads, through other highways. You say they may not want it. So anyway, I'm not sure that you can't put it where there's railroads or other highways. This is the worst place for it. I really don't have, and I would like to know who the power serves is going, so you mentioned something like 800,000 households. We want to be sure it doesn't go to serve any data centers. Absolute zero if for some reason this project does have to go through. And that there's no nuclear power traveling through it that was created by any type of nuclear, whether it's Bill Gates or Amazon or Meta or Google, they're all pro-nuclear now, and that is a horrible thing. We in this state, Washington State, know how horrible nuclear power is. We had the Washington Public Power Supply System, which was such a disaster. We know the impacts of, we still have not cleaned up the river from that. And then the other thing would be Bradford Island. There's been huge impacts to this river. The tribal nations, their whole way of life and culture was destroyed by BPA and all the dams on this river. There's things in EISs called cumulative impacts. The cumulative impacts are so big already that doing this one more thing that trashes the sacred tribal land and their fish use and various, it's just the impact on fish. Then dams can be removed to help the fish. If those dams if we get permission to remove those dams and fix the river for the fish and the what happens to your line then? Does this mean we can't remove those dams for the next 50 years? So anyway, that's just a few comments. I haven't even begun to get my head around this thing yet, but I think the impacts are huge, and there's no question an EIS is required on this thing. It's just, that's all. Thank you.
Ms. Grantham?
The next speaker I have is Mary Ripar.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's been a long time since Whistling Ridge, so I'm looking forward to this. You're in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. You've entered the twilight zone for a permitting process, so welcome. It's going to be a long, long haul. I'm assuming that the Gorge Commission also has something to say about this, or will have something to say. I brought it up to them at the last meeting. I made comments on the Columbia River Treaty. I'm sure many of you did. And it was a very interesting process. And one of the things that the Columbia River Treaty says is very important is improving the ecosystem is going to be the main aim of modernization. I don't see this project as improving the ecosystems that we have here. NEPA is a very good process. It does have cumulative impacts and effects, and those will have to be analyzed thoroughly and with analysis. This little river is being asked to do a lot. We have the Goldendale Pump Project that wants water from the Columbia. We have the EPA Superfund cleanup at Bradford Island. We have this and we have that, and you know, this is asking too much of our environment. The rights of nature needs to be included in the analysis of this, and I'm a very huge proponent of the rights of nature. Also, tribal consultation and alternatives. I would like to see a lot more alternatives. You know, we're always being asked to vote for all these projects that are going to make our lives better and lower our utility costs. Well, I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry. We have had solar projects that have promised to lower our costs. We have some of the highest costs per kilowatt hour here in this community. If you can't do something for our community, don't bother. You know, there's other alternatives that are much cleaner and much less intrusive on our environment. Also, the gentleman before me spoke about the health effects. There are health effects from transmission lines. There are health effects on humans, and there are health effects on wildlife. So these are my notes, which you'll be getting in a different format, and I'm going to submit something tonight. But I look forward to the NEPA EIS, and I think you will find that this project is not for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. I believe that's the last of our signups ahead of time.
Correct. That's all I was able to get.
Okay. Would anyone else who's in the room care to make a comment? And also for those online, if you raise your hand, we will recognize you, but let me please first turn this to our guests in the room. Yes, ma'am, if you'd please step up to the mic. State your name for the record, please. And then I saw one other hand, but we'll catch you next. Thank you again.
My name is Debbie Ellinger, and I am a survivor of cancer, and your wonderful overhead power lines, which I lived underneath or close enough that it's actually disfigured my body. And therefore, you want to put some more stuff in this area that's going to kill people. I've lost many family members to do with cancer and power lines. And there's no studies right now on what you're planning on doing. You keep mentioning tribal, and there's more effect on more than just tribal. I believe you need to do more research on your land use to actually find out who owns the land. And I'll bet you find out the government does not own it. So therefore, I'm asking for more studies and looking into how the government acquired the land if they think it's theirs. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next up. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi. Taryn Yazdani with Columbia River Keeper. Thanks for being here. I'll keep this super brief. I'm going to be speaking at the land use hearing as well. But I just wanted to ask specifically if you all would be willing to respond either tonight or in the near future to something raised in a recent article from the Columbian, quoting Julie Carter, staff from the Columbia Intertribal Fish Commission, specifically a response to the statement that the applicant is asserting the project meets the recommendations and goals for CRITFIC's energy vision, and that CRITFIC openly stated that this is untrue. I think it's extremely important to address that openly, honestly, and claiming that a project is in line with an energy vision when CRITFIC is saying the opposite is quite concerning, and how you're addressing this to the public and seems like greenwashing. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for the input and comment. Others in the room who'd like to step forward and add a comment? Let me turn to our online audience just to make sure if I'm missing a hand that's raised, and buy another couple seconds here for our in-room participants. Anything else, Ms. Crampton?
We have 3 hands raised online. The first one I'm seeing is Nathan Baker.
If Nathan Baker would go
ahead. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Beckett, members of the council. My name is Nathan Baker. I'm the senior staff attorney with Friends of the Columbia Gorge. And for this hearing, I'd like to speak about 2 procedural issues. The process is important. We want to make sure that the required procedures are properly followed for this hearing and for FSEC's process. The first procedural issue is that this hearing tonight is premature. The duty to conduct an informational public hearing is triggered by, quote, the receipt of an application for site certification, end quote. That's RCW 80.50.090. So that's triggered by an application. Draft applications don't count. And this is clearly a draft application. Draft is the first word on the cover page. All of the PDF file names in the draft application are labeled with the word draft. The word draft is used more than 200 times in the document, mostly in the footers. The document contains metadata with internal comments between the applicants, consultants, and lawyers. The FSEC website links to all the draft application materials and describes them as drafts. This is a draft application that is not ready for prime time. FSEC should not have scheduled the hearings until after it receives an application, not a draft application. This hearing is premature, and it is error to be holding this hearing on a draft application. Regardless, if and when the applicant submits an actual non-draft application or converts the draft application to a final application, that will be under the plain language of the statute, the quote, receipt of an application for site certification, end quote, which will obligate FSEC to hold a new series of hearings. The other procedural issue involves the members of the council. Last night, the appointee by Clark County to the council was never mentioned. It did not participate. We're pleased to see Commissioner Leckie from Skamania County here tonight. But tonight, there was no mention of the city of Stevenson. Under RCW 80.50.030 subsection 5, the city of Stevenson is supposed to appoint a member of the council who, quote, shall sit with the council, end quote, for hearings involving the site involving that city. According to section 2.1.3.2 of the draft application, the project is proposed inside the city of Stevenson. That may also be the case for the city of North Bonneville. The project certainly goes within a big section of the North Bonneville urban area. We're not quite sure about the city limits. But the statute requires city appointees to, quote, sit with the council, end quote, for this hearing. Holding this hearing without their participation violates the statute. In conclusion, if and when the applicant submits a non-draft final application, FSEC will then need to schedule informational public hearings in each of the 3 counties. The relevant county and city appointees to the council will need to sit with the council for these hearings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Ms. Grantham, who's up next?
The next speaker is Kate Murphy.
Thank you.
Hey there, this is Kate Murphy. I'm with Columbia River Keeper. Can I ask for a point of clarification before I start? I'm just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
In yesterday's meeting, we were able to ask project-specific questions, and I think I heard Chris mention that that would be okay. So can I get a response to a question?
If you'd go ahead and state your question for the record, and then we'll see where we're at on time. Ultimately, any iterative answers that I believe are helpful in the moment. At the same time, ultimately, that's at the latitude of the chair, and out of respect to the group, certainly want to continue to proceed here. So, but please note your question for the record and your other comments, and we'll start this now.
Thank you. I'd start by lifting up Taryn's concern about potential misrepresentation for CRITFIC. And my question directly is about what type of modeling and research and testing has been done specific to the Georgia Pacific pulp and paper mill in Camas, Washington, which is a known contaminated site that contains total petroleum hydrocarbons. It contains polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, polychlorinated biphenyls, metals, dioxins, and things like that. And it's got an order for cleanup. So I'm just curious if you could speak to that a little bit about how that's been addressed in the project plan. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I am actually going to ask that we not answer that question in the moment, given I can appreciate the complexity of it, including from other past experience on certain cleanups. So I think we'd all probably be served if we handle that more formally. So
could I just ask specifically, has that site been considered based on the contamination there? That would be helpful.
Your questions are being noted for the record, so.
Oh, okay. So we're not doing the same kind of Q&A tonight. Okay. Then I will also ask for the record to have some more specific explanation about when it says that it's buried within the sediment of the riverbed. There's a lot of bedrock, and it seems that wouldn't be possible for the entire 100 miles. So how is it being negotiated through some of those areas where there might not be the deeper sediment? That's it. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, can you clarify, was there a specific section of the river that you were noting was the area that was more predominant in bedrock?
Well, I mean,
or just in general?
Chris mentioned they've done a whole scan of the river, so that would probably be more informative than my input, but I think throughout the entire 100 miles, I would be interested in that. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. I think we may be close. See one more.
We have one more. Excuse me if I pronounce it incorrectly. Juan Monje.
You did it correctly. I'm Juan Monje. I have only I have some concern, but for the record, I can do two questions. One, if this project is meant to serve a residential and regional clean energy goal, why is the main converter station located in the Rivergate industrial area, where multiple large data centers are being planned? Another one question is, Power Bridge said that you will respect tribal concerns. Can you list which tribal nations have formally consented and provide copies of that letter, please? That's it for now. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Monje. And I see that you had posted a question in the chat, and that's been responded to. I think if we could make sure that we have the contact information if you wish to be contacted in case we need to follow up just to clarify anything here in the record, that'd be helpful. And you could paste that in the chat in this instance. Thank you again for your participation. I don't see any other hands raised. Are there others in our audience this evening who wish to speak? Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Martin Hecht, and I'm a 35-year resident of Stevenson, Washington. And my concern is primarily that this, I guess, was billed as a public information meeting, but I don't think it was very well publicized. I mean, I'm glad that there's other neighbors and other interested parties here, but I really found out about it randomly, like last night, and tried to get some word out today that, you know, that this meeting was happening. I find it very interesting and intriguing, this project. I'd love to learn more, but if you're going to have a public information meeting, I think you need to try a little harder to, you know, engage the public.
Thank you for the input, and I certainly appreciate that. I think we all share, you know, the interest in achieving what you've stated, and obviously, you know, communicating out and finding everyone that wants to be found is sometimes a challenge, but ultimately it's one we need to stick with, and I can just assure you that we will continue to do so, and where we can improve, we will. It would be our pledge. So, but thank you for stepping forward and calling that out. Other hands or anyone else in the audience? Okay. Then I am going to conclude our public informational hearing and meeting at 6:54 p.m. And if the audience would bear with us while we enter into our next meeting, which I will go ahead and make a couple comments on, just to make sure I get this correct. So again, we're bringing and I will soon bring this land use consistency hearing to order. Actually, let me just do that here at 6:55. And during this hearing, we will have testimony regarding the proposed project's consistency and compliance with land use plans and zoning ordinances of Skamania County in this instance. This is the only subject that is allowed during this hearing. We've had our general comments, and now this is specifically in order for the council to begin to create the record and make a determination on land use consistency and compliance with Skamania County land use plans and zoning ordinances. So if we could just keep comments specific to that topic, and if Ms. Grantham would please call the roll. We'll do that quickly, and then we'll have a short presentation that will get into a little more detail of what this looks like in Skamania County. Might be of interest even if you don't have a comment, and then we will take your comments. So with that, let's call the roll.
Chair Beckett. I will start with Department of Commerce.
Elizabeth Osborne, present.
Department of Ecology.
Blake Nelson, present.
Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Nate Pamplin, present and attending virtually.
Department of Natural Resources.
Maverick Ryan, present, attending virtually.
Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Brian Ryberick, present and attending virtually.
Moving on to the local government council member for this project from Skamania County, excuse me, Asa Lakey.
Present online.
Assistant Attorney General John Thompson.
Present online.
Administrative Law Judge Russell Meekow.
Present online.
For council staff, Sonia Bumpus.
Present.
Amy Hofkemeyer.
Present.
Lance Caputo. Lance Caputo is here. He's just not sitting at his table at the moment, so I will note that he is present. Maria Belkina.
Present.
Carl Hulapa. Carl is also not at his seat, but he is present tonight. And then Lisa McLean.
So online.
And for the Council for the Environment, Sarah Reinefeld.
Sarah Reinefeld is present virtually.
Thank you. Chair, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Let me also just quickly note before we turn this to our presenters from our applicant team. Judge Meekow is with us tonight as an administrative law judge of the Office of Administrative Hearings. That's designed to help further just document this process. And Judge Meekow will basically take over any comment gathering that we'll be doing, and will further give a word about his role in this when we come to the comment period. So just wanted to acknowledge Judge Meekow in that regard. And with that, let me turn this to our presenters.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Malia Bassett. I'm on the applicant team. I'm an environmental planner. I'm going to go through the proposal and the applicable land uses and zoning of it. You want to introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is Tim McMahon. I am legal counsel to the applicant, and I'm an attorney with Stoll Reeves Law Firm. And let's see. Good evening. Nice to see you all.
All right, so everyone has seen this before. I am mainly going to be, did I move that? I'm mainly going to be discussing the on-land portions in Washington tonight. So that's the center map in yellow. That's where we come out of the Columbia River, and we're proposing to be on land to bypass the Bonneville Dam, which Chris talked about earlier. There are some in-water segments for the alignment that are on the Washington side of the Columbia River. The border, as you all know, between Washington and Oregon is the center of the Columbia River. So as the line follows the river, it goes into Oregon, comes out, goes back into Washington. So we're referring to those as segments, and there's 8 along Skamania County, and that's approximately 18 miles. So I'll go through those quickly since this is a land use consistency hearing, and these are in water, but just so everyone is aware what's in Washington. So starting east and going west, those numbers you see are river miles. So one of the segments, or sorry, the line is the red dash, and then the segments in Washington are highlighted yellow. And so this one is showing between river mile 159.5 and then going west is a segment crossing over into Washington along the Columbia River. And then this is the segment that approaches Stevenson, where I'll start later for the on-land portion. And then once we get past the on-land portion, after North Bonneville, when we re-enter the Columbia River, we're in Washington again, in the river. All right, going on to on land in Washington. So in Skamania County, on land, we're within the jurisdictions of the city of Stevenson, city of North Bonneville, and then unincorporated Skamania County. So starting with the city of actually starting an overview map. So this is showing our on-land portion in city of Stevenson. That's the top center area. Sorry, I don't have a pointer. And then unincorporated Skamania County is that lighter portion, and then you see North Bonneville jurisdiction in the shaded tan down toward the bottom left. So on land project components, Chris mentioned these earlier. We have temporary horizontal directional drilling called HDD. Those are areas, as well as temporary horizontal auger boring called HAB areas, and then the high voltage direct current, HVDC, transmission cable. And in this table, I've summarized which of those components are in each jurisdiction. So in the city of Stevenson, we have the HDD and the HVDC. In unincorporated Skamania County, we have HDD and HVDC. And then North Bonneville, we have HAB and HVDC. So I'll go through each of those components and we can look at those a little closer. Starting in the city of Stevenson, looking at the project components, you can see the temporary HDD area. We have a close-up, kind of a zoom in of that area with the green box. That's the temporary HDD area. And then just a really, really short portion of the HVD transmission cable, again, on land for about 0.4 miles. Shaded, I have the parcel that says PR. That stands for Public Use and Recreation Zone. That's what City of Stevenson is zoning that parcel. And the proposed land use for those project components in the City of Stevenson fit with the definition of a utility facility. And one more thing to orient you. So the portion of the project in Stevenson is highlighted that red, you can see in the top portion of the project. And that'll be the same going through Skamania and North Bonneville as well. Moving on to unincorporated Skamania County. Here we have HVDC transmission cable, approximately 4 miles of buried cable, and then the temporary HDD area, approximately 1.26 acres. So looking at the more bold red lines, that's where the project is proposed in Skamania County. And you can see it weaves from Stevenson and then coming out of North Bonneville and then back toward the Columbia River. So the zones that are designated in unincorporated Skamania County is, we're in one zone there, so the F2 large woodland, and that's part of the National Scenic Area General Management Area. The proposed land use for the portions of the project that are in Skamania County are both underground utility facility for the HVDC and the HDD area. And then lastly, North Bonneville. The project components proposed in the jurisdiction of North Bonneville are the HVDC transmission cable, approximately 3.5 miles, and then temporary HAB areas. And that combined is about 0.05 acres. The zones in North Bonneville, so for the portion of the HVDC transmission cable goes through 2 zones. USA, which is this close to Bonneville Dam, is the core. And then the other zone is the pink one you see there, Industrial Business Park. The proposed land uses for both of those zones fit with the definition of utility that North Bonneville defines in their comp plan and zoning code. And then the other project component, the temporary HAB areas, are in the USA zone, again, USACE, and that would be a temporary land use, so construction essentially. And I will pass it over to Tim.
Thank you, Malia. I have a tendency to speak loud, so if I do that, just let me know. Again, my name is Tim McMahon, and I'm legal counsel to the applicant. I'm with the Stoll Reeves Law Firm. And it's good to be here with you all. And nice to see the council, and appreciate staff coming out as well with FSEC. I want to first respond to some comments made last night that were reiterated by the Friends of the Gorge a short time ago. The first comment concerned the comment deadline for the project, an objection to the amount of time needed for this project to proceed to hearing. And it is within FSEC's jurisdiction, and there's no rationale to keep the record open for an additional 30 days. And it is our view that that is unnecessary and within the province of FSEC should they believe that that is necessary. Second, there was a comment concerning the draft application, quote unquote. It is common practice to submit draft applications for agency review. Whether done intentionally or inadvertently, this is immaterial. If the cooks got to see what was in the oven in our filing the draft application, that's just fine. It's more information, and it is not something we're concerned about. And then the third comment related to county appointees. This is a matter for FSEC's discretion. FSEC makes these appointments in consultation with local governments, and the timing of these appointments is immaterial, and there is no legal or procedural error. Again, it is up to FSEC. So I just want to make that record straight for the public and respond to those comments from last night. So turning to tonight, as you heard this evening, the land use consistency hearing's purpose is to determine whether the project is consistent and in compliance with local land use plans and zoning ordinances. FSEC makes this determination. The relevant inquiry for FSEC's initial land use analysis is, in quotes, whether the pertinent local land use provisions prohibit the proposed site, quote, expressly or by operation clearly, convincingly, and unequivocally. Fairly strong language that limits the opportunity to impede the project at this point in the process. If a proposed project can be permitted either outright or conditionally, it is consistent and in compliance with land use provisions for the purposes of the FSEC statute RCW 8050.090. For this project, zoning is an awkward concept. Zoning as applicable in a typical FSEC proceeding is intended to regulate private property. These are public rights of way situated on public property. It is at odds to apply land use rules to public linear infrastructure that serve broad public needs. That is because fundamentally public rights of way, regardless of zoning, are the preferred locations where public infrastructure is and should be placed. That is true whether it's water, wastewater, telecommunication, or transmission infrastructure. And the concept of land use consistency in this setting is complicated because the FSEC rules primarily reflect privately owned, standalone, stationary public infrastructure such as power plants. Moreover, development activity and public rights of way like those proposed here are governed by franchise authority and right-of-way permits, not zoning. RCW 80.32010 authorizes cities and counties with control of any public street or road to grant authority for the construction, maintenance, and operation of transmission lines. Similarly, addressing state highways and state rights of way through permits that are issued by the Washington State Department of Transportation. Nearly all of the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project proposed in Skamania County is underwater. I think that's been explained tonight. In these locations, neither the county zoning code nor the county's comprehensive plan impose land use restrictions on in-water uses or river bottom land within the Columbia River. And as Mr. Hawker explained, terrestrial locations are for this project sited within existing public rights of way. Fundamentally, public rights of way are the preferred location for placement of linear facilities of this kind. So concerning land use consistency, the FSEC rules contemplate that FSEC and the applicant will work with local governments to seek a finding of land use consistency. If a local jurisdiction believes that a proposed FSEC project is consistent and in compliance with its land use plans and zoning ordinances, it may provide and the applicant may enter into a certificate from local authorities attesting to the fact that the proposal is consistent and in compliance with land use plans and zoning ordinances. The certificate of consistency provides proof of consistency and compliance with applicable land use plans and zoning ordinances, and the inquiry then ends there. Absent a certificate of consistency, FSEC issues its decision regarding consistency after reviewing the applicable land use plans and zoning ordinances. First, the applicant and local authorities are directed to address compliance and non-compliance with land use plans or zoning ordinances. Then, FSEC determines whether the proposed site is consistent and in compliance with land use plan and zoning ordinances pursuant to the FSEC statute RCW 80.50.0902. FSEC's review does not consider all land use plan provisions. A land use plan includes the portions of a comprehensive plan that outline proposals for an area's development, typically by assigning general uses such as housing to land segments and specifying desired concentrations of and design goals. A zoning ordinance is a local government's ordinance regulating the use of land adopted by Washington law, and zoning ordinances include the applicable zoning map, development restrictions, and associated definitions. The applicable county land use plan and zoning ordinances provisions are found within the North Bonneville, City of Stevenson, and Skamania County zoning codes and comprehensive plans. As noted, it is awkward to address land use consistency within public rights-of-way, principally because infrastructure of all kinds should fundamentally be placed within public rights-of-way to avoid proliferation of linear facilities outside of rights-of-way. While FSEC rules concerning land use consistency create an awkward paradigm for citing linear in-ground facilities, we will go ahead and summarize the zoning provisions from the three local municipalities that were referenced earlier. First, Skamania County. In Skamania County, the project is proposed on, quote, unzoned land. There are no use restrictions or development regulations for unzoned land in Skamania County. Skamania County. There are two land use designations that are governed by the management plan and SCC Title 22. And Title 22 is not a zoning ordinance pursuant to the Washington Administrative Code 463-26090. The management plan and the Skamania County Code Title 22 are not land use plans or zoning ordinances. The in-water portions of the project are identified as water GMA, quote unquote, on the county zoning map. The water GMA designation does not impose restrictions on use. Therefore, these portions of the project are consistent with the Skamania County Code Title 22. The remainder of the on-land portions of the project is located on land zoned and governed by the management plan, Skamania County Code Title 22. And even if the management plan and SCC Title 22 apply, new underground utility facilities like the project could and typically are permitted through an administrative review process. Turning to North Bonneville, Title 22 of North Bonneville Municipal Code governs land use in North Bonneville. The transmission line would pass through land zone, quote, federal ownership area. This zone, including transmission line corridors, is not subject to city regulations in North Bonneville. The project would also pass through land zone industrial business park. The city allows utilities, including transmission lines, in the industrial business park zone, which we've learned tonight is in fact where this project is proposed. The project, as proposed, is a permissible use within the zone. Finally, the City of Stevenson. The project would pass through land zoned public use and recreation. The project would be in existing right-of-way, which is where these types of uses are typically permitted. Finally, In issuing a proposed site certificate, we anticipate that FSEC will work with the county and the cities of North Bonneville and Stevenson and the applicant to include conditions in the draft site certificate agreement which consider any applicable state, local, and community interests affected by the construction of the facility. The applicant is fully committed to achieving these objectives with the 3 counties along the Columbia River and the cities of North Bonneville and Stevenson. So just a word about the Shoreline Management Act. I had several comments, people coming up to me and asking questions about from FSEC staff about the Shoreline Management Act. The applicant fully understands the need for review and compliance with the Shoreline Management Act, and it is for FSEC to conduct this review, not for the applicant to conduct this review. Whether this issue should be considered now or later in the process is a matter for FSEC to decide. That said, to my knowledge, the most recent precedent here, the most recent FSEC precedent here, was the Columbia Solar Facility project in Klickitat County some years ago. The Shoreline Management Act review was conducted after the land use consistency hearing. Whether that is done now or later is a matter for FSEC in its discretion. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to provide this information to you.
Thank you both very much. Let me help turn this over to Judge Miko. And Your Honor, if I could ask if you would help me know when and how to incorporate any questions or comments from the FSEC Project Council. I wanted to acknowledge their presence here, and if you have questions, especially on this evening's presentation, apologies for having not asked you earlier in the original initial presentation, but I know you participated in it last night. So having acknowledged all that, Judge Miko, if you would help facilitate both our public comment as well as if council has questions for the presenters. Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me. Good evening. I'm Administrative Law Judge Russ Miko with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I am going to be helping with the second public comment period for this land use consistency hearing. There are a few general things everybody needs to know before we get going. Unlike the earlier public comment period this evening, here we are only taking public comments about whether the site is or is not consistent and is or is not in compliance with applicable land use plans and zoning ordinances. So this is not an opportunity to ask questions during this public comment period. The public comments are going to be limited to 3 minutes per person. I'll try not to stop any speaker mid-sentence, but if you go much longer than the time allotted, I might have to move on to the next commenter. And again, remember, your comments are supposed to be limited to the issues of consistency and compliance with applicable land use plans and zoning ordinances. Following the land use consistency hearing, my job is to draft an order including the findings of fact, appropriate portions of the relevant law or code, and conclusions of law regarding whether a proposed site is consistent and in compliance with applicable land use plans and zoning ordinances as required by Revised Code of Washington 80.50.090 paragraph 2 and chapter 463-26 Washington Administrative Code. I will provide my draft order to the FSEC assigned Assistant Attorney General and its staff for any revisions prior to the staff presenting the order to the council with a recommendation of adoption at an open meeting. So that's that's an explanation of my role in today's proceedings. As it relates to questions of the applicant's counsel, I believe that should go first before there are public comments. So I did not catch the name of the person who might be asking questions, though.
Well, direct me as you need to, Your Honor, here, despite me, quote, being the chair. What I'm trying to get to is any council members of FSEC, do you have questions or any quick comments you wanted to note for this land use portion as allowable by Judge Miko? And please raise your hand or speak up, and otherwise we will soon move to the public comment. Council members? We have Councilman Nelson with a question.
Thank you, Chair Beckett. So this might be more germane to the general information section. So if so, you can stricken it from the record, but I'll ask tomorrow. So I was just wondering about buffers for when the line is comes up through Stevenson, and with the horizontal drilling, how far that is from the bank of the river. I asked that in the context of the shoreline master plan. And again, if you don't have I know it's not a Q&A right now. I'm just stating that'll be part of my consideration for this project.
Council Pamplin.
Thank you. With the next council member who has a question or comment, would they raise their hand and please proceed?
Council Pamplin, I believe that's you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for Mr. McMahon. I understand, when you went through some of the citations there about the project applicant working with local government to seek concurrence and then relaying that instrument back to FSEC, which I think would certainly help with this process. There's avenues to proceed with that determination without that concurrence. But I'm just wondering if you could please share the status of the conversations with the city of Stevenson, the city of North Bonneville, and Skamania County, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. We've been in pretty consistent conversation with Skamania County for some time. And I'm not sure if there's anybody from the county here. I don't think so. So we have a pretty mature conversation going with Skamania County to obtain a land use consistency certificate. It's not concluded. We have requested that the North Bonneville city also work with us on a consistency determination. We've provided documentation to both of those municipalities, asking to talk to them after this hearing, and we, as I've said, we reached out previously as well. The third county, or the third city, excuse me, or the third municipality. Sorry, City of Steve. Yeah, North Bonneville and City of Stevenson. We've talked to both of those municipalities. So, in the works, and we do hope to complete consistency certificates with them as defined in the FSEC rules. We're not quite there yet.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Grantham, are there any other council members who would like to make a comment or question?
Council Leckie has a question, Your Honor.
Okay, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question as we're talking about county land use and zoning and FSEC. There was a comment that caught my attention was that in Skamania County, the majority of this project is underwater in the Columbia River. So do we already have a permit from, I would assume would be the Army Corps of Engineers, because Congress has authority over navigable waters. So don't they delegate that authority and permitting to the Army Corps of Engineers? So for the project, shouldn't that permit be obtained first before FSEC? That's just, and I'm new to this process, so I'm just asking. That's just something that kind of running around my head on this whole process. Thank you.
Tim McMahon here, particularly since that was a council member, I believe. I don't know that I have the answer to that, but I think Mr. Hawker may have some additional insights on that question. And you might want to repeat the question. I'm not sure. All right.
Your Honor, did you want to try and paraphrase the question, or would you like me to? I'm happy to, whatever's proper.
Oh, you can go ahead and paraphrase it.
Okay. Council Leckie, make sure I get this right, but essentially, why isn't the Corps of Engineers going ahead of the FSEC process?
I can't speak to the legalities of, in what order. I can tell you that the Corps, the state processes in Oregon and Washington are proceeding down parallel paths. And with I think a real serious attempt at in a coordinated fashion. So I don't believe there's a sequence that is required or even desirable, but that would be my answer for now.
And Council Lecky, we're certainly capturing this and, happy to dig deeper and follow up.
Yeah, I guess that would just be a point of clarification for me is, can FSEC supplant the Army Corps of Engineer permitting that's required, if it's required, I guess. Thank you.
And I believe Director Bumpus has a couple comments to add, so please, you're welcome.
I just wanted to respond in part that FSEC is coordinating with the Army Corps of Engineers on the permits that they do have jurisdiction for here. And that is our practice when we have an application for site certification that triggers authorizations or permits from the Corps. We will coordinate with them in their review of impacts, the activities that are proposed in the application submitted to them. We'll look at that as we're also reviewing the application that is before FSEC. And one of the reasons we do that is because we want to ensure we're not duplicating where we don't need to duplicate, also to ensure that we have consistency in terms of if there are measures or mitigation that needs to be implemented to ensure that we're sharing information and coordinating so that there isn't conflicting requirements, if you will. So I can tell you that. I don't know if that's helpful to answering this question or not.
I think it was, so thank you.
Oh, yeah, this is Commissioner Lecky. Yeah, no, that's helpful, and I don't know if we'll have the answer exactly tonight, but that's just something I was curious about. Then, as the dredging of the Columbia River is done to the project, is this required under Section 10404 permit? Because it's not exactly removing dredging or material, but it's also disturbing it. So I was just kind of asking some clarification on that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lecky. And Your Honor, I believe Amy Hofkemeyer has a word to add still, or no?
I do, thank you. And then it looks like Mr. Hawker may also have some additional information. In terms of coordination with the Army Corps, I wanted to add a little bit more information. The State Environmental Policy Act review must be conducted to be able to issue the state 401 water quality certification, which is then in support of the permits issued by the Army Corps of Engineers, who we know are working towards the review of a 404 permit, 408, as well as Section 10, I believe. And so in terms of sequence, there is reason for us to be reviewing this application ahead of issuance of those permits. And I don't know if there's additional information Mr. Hawker has, but those are the permitting pathways that we know that the Army Corps is working on right now.
Thank you. This is Judge Miko. Mr. Hoffer, do you have anything else to add in response?
Your Honor, I can relay that he has a thumbs up, and that was covered. And since I had the floor, and we'll soon turn this back to you, Your Honor, I think for public comment. One other issue that is, again, part of the process that's beginning and will need to be sorted out, and that is certainly, I think, the role of the Department of Natural Resources and its jurisdiction over aquatic lands that I believe is an issue that will be also considered. I don't know the answer to that question, but one that I just wanted to note as we go forward here. So any closing comments from staff or council? Otherwise, I think, Your Honor, we're back to you in our public testimony.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Grantham, would you please call the first commenter?
Yes, Your Honor. The first person I have is Taryn Yazdani.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Taryn Yazdani with Columbia Riverkeeper. There are three brief points I want to raise in oral testimony. Columbia Riverkeeper has submitted more detailed written comments for the record, but just wanted to reiterate these points. First, there is an incomplete information in the application. WAC 463-60 requires detailed information from the applicant on the project site, its environment, including fish and wildlife habitat, project alternatives, and expedited impacts of the river. Riverkeeper will be submitting separate comments on this specifically. However, we wanted to raise this point because the issues that are present with the incomplete information in the application make full participation in the land use consistency process impossible. Accordingly, we urge FSEC to deem the draft application as incomplete, suspend review until such time as the applicant has submitted an application that substantially complies with FSEC's regulations. Second, the information we do have shows that the application is inconsistent with Skamania County Shoreline Master Program, which FSEC must address. The Shoreline Master Program is a zoning ordinance, and FSEC must find consistency now. The proposed use as an interregional transmission cable running along the shoreline through parts of Skamania County and the Skamania County Shoreline Master Program explicitly prohibits such a use on the shoreline. First, a section of the cable running through an area is designated as natural environment. Utility corridors are expressly listed as prohibited in the natural environment area unless they can be located elsewhere. The nature and use as proposed is that it can be located elsewhere. There are any number of ways to supply power from the east side of Oregon to the west side of Oregon and Washington, including existing proposals, not to mention the many ways in which specific projects can avoid running through the natural environment area. This is exactly the kind of issue that is within the scope of FSEC's review at this stage, and the proposed use is prohibited in the relevant area and cannot even theoretically receive a permit for operation. Second, under the Shoreline Master Program point, the Shoreline Master Program includes regulation for transmission lines that apply to all shoreline areas, and it makes it clear that the kind of transmission cable being proposed is prohibited. These regulations require any transmission cable to be sited such that they spend as little time as possible in the shoreline area, including running perpendicularly to the shore. The proposed cable, as already discussed, has no reason to be in the shoreline area, and the proposed siting has the cable running parallel along the shore for long stretches without justification. Quickly, third and finally, I would like to reiterate the request heard last night to keep the record open for testimony. With the record being open for about 6 hours in total, half of which are taken up by this meeting, it does not give ample time for public response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Grantham, would you please call the next commenter?
Certainly. The next person in person we have is Mary Repar.
Thank you. As a resident of Stevenson, I think it's totally inappropriate that we be discussing this land consistency. I can assure you, I'm pretty sure that the city of Stevenson does not know about the land consistency certificate. At least I attend most of their meetings and I have not even heard about this. Second, the Pioneer did not print this meeting here, and I think it should have been postponed in the city of Stevenson so that the residents of Stevenson, and especially those who use the waterfront consistently, be able to come here. Yes, there were some technical issues on the Skamania Pioneers side, but that's no excuse. We can always have a meeting later. This is a draft, and I'm really appalled that we're spending so much time on a draft. I want to put in my statements for the record on something that's real, not something that's nebulous. we have a lot of geologic hazards here in the gorge area. The Piper-Laurie landslide on Rock Creek here, the creek that you all crossed over, happened in 2007. The North Bonneville slide, as you remember, it went all the way to the other side and you could cross it on land, happened whenever it happened in the millennia past. I would like the city of Stevenson, my municipality, to be included in this project. I'm going to tell one of my council members here that we need to talk about it on Thursday night when there's a city council meeting. This is the first time that I'm hearing about this land consistency hearing, and I'm not a land expert, but I made comments on the unmapped lands that are in our in the east side here, and those will be zoned here shortly by the county commissioners one way or the other. I'm not sure what the reference to the management plan in the National Scenic Area was, but I'm fairly sure that the Gorge Commission would like to know that they're being included in this process. And USACE has a responsibility to the citizens of this community to let us know when there's a permit of any kind going on. And I have not read about it in our paper of record, which is the Skamania Pioneer. So again, I think it's totally inappropriate to have this, these types of meetings before we have something solid and substantial before us so we can keep our powder dry, whatever, and make comments based on facts and not nebulous proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those comments. I do want to remind everybody that this portion of the consistency hearing is for you to make comments only about the issues of consistency and compliance with applicable land use plans and zoning ordinances. So please make sure that your comments are focused on those issues. Would you please call the next commenter?
Certainly, Your Honor. I'm going to move on to those who have their hands raised online. Next we have is Nathan Baker.
Good evening. This is Nathan Baker with Friends of the Columbia Gorge, and everything I will say tonight involves procedural issues and errors and will implicate the appearance of fairness doctrine and due process rights. There are certain procedural errors in this process that are violating the appearance of fairness doctrine and the due process rights of stakeholders. The first issue, as you've heard earlier tonight, is that this hearing is premature. The land use hearing must happen after the informational public hearing, which can only happen after, quote, the receipt of an application for site certification, end quote, under the statute. Draft applications don't count. And even if it is common for draft applications to be submitted, I've never seen that before with FSEC, but draft applications still don't trigger FSEC's required processes. And with land use consistency, vesting concerns are implicated. The legal question before the council is whether, quote, the proposed site is consistent and in compliance with, end quote, land use laws and rules, quote, on the date of the application, end quote. The applicant isn't allowed to submit a draft application now and potentially enjoy the benefits of vesting for land use consistency purposes based on a draft application. So once a non-draft application is submitted, FSEC will need to schedule land use consistency hearings on that application. The second issue involves the membership of the council. We've heard no reference to the members appointed by the cities of Stevenson and North Bonneville, who, quote, shall sit with the council, end quote, under the statute for these hearings. Mr. McMahon said tonight that something about that the council appoints those people. That isn't true. I'll read to you from the statute. It says, quote, the city legislative authority of every city within whose corporate limits an energy facility is proposed to be located shall appoint a member or designee as a voting member to the council, end quote. Next, we have concerns about the defective hearing notice, which discourages written public comments. It only says public comments will be accepted during the hearings, and then, quote, if you are unable to attend the hearings, please send your comment in writing, end quote. It's effectively discouraging public comment. that a written public comment that can as something that can only happen as a backup to attending the hearing in person. Compare that with Washington's Local Project Review Act, which requires each public notice to include statements of the right of any person to comment on the application. That's RCW 36.70B.110, subsection 2E. So here, FSEC is providing a deficient public notice that is less than anyone else would get in the state of Washington for any project under land use review. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you please call the next commenter?
Certainly. The next person I see online is just under the name Eric. Eric, whenever you speak up, please tell us your last name and maybe spell it.
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Hi, Eric Riston. That's Wriston. I'm an attorney at Cragg Law Center. I'm here representing Columbia Riverkeeper. I just have one really quick point to make. The applicant's counsel made some statements regarding the consistency determinations or consistency certificates from the local governments and that they might still supply those. FSEC's rules are really clear that those have to be submitted by the land use hearing if they're going to be considered. To quote here from Washington Administrative Code 463-26090, this rule contemplates that applicants will enter as exhibits at the land use hearing certificates from local authorities attesting to the fact that the proposal is consistent and in compliance with land use plans and zoning ordinances. And the rule goes on to talk about how if they do submit that, then there's an opportunity for contrary demonstration by anyone present at the hearing. So there's two issues there. Both pretty explicitly states that those certificates have to be submitted by the hearing. And then also if you're accepting them after the hearing, you're denying the public a chance to respond to those in contravention of those rules. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Grantham, would you please call the next commenter?
Certainly. The next person I see online, and apologies if I pronounce your last name incorrectly, is Elijah Citas.
Yeah, hi. Good evening. My name is Elijah Citas. I'm an energy policy analyst and attorney for Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. It was not my intent to comment tonight, but just based on the comments that I've heard and given the limited opportunity to provide written comments on the particular land use compatibility issues here in Skamania County, I want to offer just a few points for the record. First off, CRIFIC is a political subdivision of the 4 Columbia River Treaty Tribes, the Yakama Nation, Confederate Tribes, Umatilla Indian Reservation, Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, and Nez Perce Tribe. We're not a stakeholder, and for that reason, I wasn't intending to comment, but it is important for the compatibility decision to mention that this section of river that is within Skamania County is within Zone 6. Zone 6 is a 147-mile stretch of river that is an exclusive Treaty Indian commercial fishing area. The exclusion is for commercial fishing only. The state regulates, states of Washington and Oregon regulate commercial fishing in other sections. But in Zone 6, it's exclusively Treaty Indian commercial, although non-commercial sports fishers may still fish here. Zone 6 is also the location of 31 in lieu and treaty fishing access sites. These are federal lands that are held for the exclusive use and benefit of the Columbia River Indian Treaty Tribes. CRIFIC operates and maintains these sites, but they are federal lands and they are held for that federal purpose. They're created by a statute, 2 different statutes, and are governed under under Part 247 of the code. I offer these comments to remind FSEC of the significance of the lands we're talking about, and to state for the record that there are 5 in lieu and treaty fishing access sites within Skamania County. That's Bonneville, North Bonneville site, where the upland portion of the transmission would pass, would be immediately adjacent. There's also the Wind River site, Cook Underwood site, the Cook site, and White Salmon. And so with that, I'll just leave that and ask that FSEC consider these federal uses and the uses as held for the treaty tribes of the Lower Columbia River. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Grantham, will you please call the next commenter?
Yep. Next is Steve McCoy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay, great. Hi, I am Steve McCoy. I'm a staff attorney with Friends of the Columbia Gorge. Counselors, thank you for this opportunity to testify tonight. I'd like to start off with the defective notice. It contained dates and deadlines that were unclear coming in, and we end up only having a few hours to submit written comments. The hearing notice, which was not dated and does not indicate the comment period nor the deadline for submitting written comments. Well, we learned last night that Clark County land use hearing that there is apparently only a very narrow window of time each night to submit written comments from 5:30 in the evening until midnight. Director Bumpus referred the public to the FSEC web pages, and indeed those web pages specify just a 6.5-hour time period for submitting written comments. While the 6.5-hour time period may be intended to be the window for time for submitting comments via FSEC's online public portal, the web pages do not make such distinction. Instead, they specify a 6.5-hour comment period for all written comments. It runs concurrently with the actual hearing itself, and attendees of the hearing will have to quickly drive back home and type up their written comments, including to respond to new evidence as was offered by the proponents as part of this hearing itself. Moreover, none of this is indicated in the actual hearing notice, which is where you expect to see comment periods and deadlines. In addition, there was only one hearing notice for 3 counties, and it does not explain that each county's land use consistency hearing is limited to evaluating land use consistency solely within that county. The failure to include this information on the hearing notice confuses and prejudices the public. In addition, there was an insufficient notice period. Typically, you would see 11, 12, 13, notice period was only 11 days for the Clark County hearing, 12 days for the Skamania County hearing, and 13 days for the Klickitat hearing. Under the State Local Project Review Act, it's 14 days. Skamania County typically gives 20 days for most things. 12-day notice period for tonight's hearing was insufficient. In addition, as my time is running lower, 3 minutes is insufficient. We object to only being allowed 3 minutes of testimony, particularly because we have had to use that time to make procedural objections. With only a couple of people speaking on land use consistency, there is no need to severely restrict each stakeholder's time to 3 minutes. Last night, there was so much time left on the table of the hearing that it concluded nearly an hour early. Still, folks, or the only person who testified, I guess, was held to 3 minutes. So finally, based on all the documented errors and flawed procedures, FSEC is violating Washington's appearance of fairness doctrine and the due process rights of the stakeholders and participants to this hearing. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Ms. Grantham, are there any other commenters?
The final person I'm seeing is Richard Hall.
Mr. Hall, would you please proceed?
Yes, thank you. I'm the contract planning advisor for the city of North Bonneville. So I've been following for quite some time now, all the processes. So I've been included in lots of emails and things like that. And so I've done a lot of research on it. However, yesterday I received a consistency certificate in my email asking if I would sign that. And so I really haven't even had time to review it and to consider any aspects that might be pertinent. So, but I just wanted to let you know that I have been participating in this. I have put the information on our city website. I've brought the information in front of our city council, and I expect to provide a report next week at the council meeting for the city of North Bonneville, just to discuss the proceedings this evening. So I just wanted you to know that I am participating in this procedure.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Grantham, is there anybody else?
I'm not seeing anybody online. It is up to you, Your Honor, if you wanted to open the floor to those in person. We do have about 6 minutes left that we have planned for tonight's meeting.
Okay, well, let's open it up to the floor if there are any in-person people who have a comment to make. I just ask that if you, when you approach the podium, if you just say your name.
We have a commenter that's coming forward. Welcome.
Hi. My name's Chuck Oldfield. I'm actually for 2 more days. I'm a city council member here in the city of Stevenson. And the only thing that I wanted to piggyback a little bit on Mary Rapar's comments was that I'm here tonight because of an invitation that I got by an email. You'll notice that no other council members are here tonight, and no other representatives from the city of Stevenson. I congratulate Asa being on the council, because I know he'll speak for the county. If I were to follow your plan and ask questions specifically about land use consistency, it might be to express a concern about whether you've looked at all the proper right-of-ways for public and federal and county lands. Have you talked to any of the constituents that have private property that abut these properties? I've heard no discussions at city council meetings, so I don't know if anybody from planning has talked with you, but my concerns would be the properties around the interpretive center, coming, the egress from the river coming up around the interpretive center, going by the Skamania Lodge. And then, if I understand your map correctly, which tonight's the first time I've seen it, the route going around Ash Lake, well, that may be a lot of that county property. I know that there's a lot of private property around that area as well. So those would be my concerns. I would like to see that somebody had reached out a little bit better to the city, that our city administrator or a mayor or somebody might have even brought this up at one of our council meetings. It hasn't been discussed at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The time is 7:56 p.m. and the meeting is scheduled to adjourn at 8 p.m. So at this point, with the limited amount of time available, I'm going to turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Judge. Out of deference to those who are still here, are there other members of the public who do wish to come forward and have your comment included in tonight's proceedings? We would like to conclude at 8, but certainly if there's another comment, then I think that I would suggest we hear it, Your Honor. I'm sorry, ma'am. If I could just make sure that the judge guides you here, just so we keep this proper, and thank you.
Yes, if you would like to do that, I don't see there's any prejudice letting them make their comments here. So would the next person please identify themselves and make their comment?
I'm Debbie Allinger, and I've heard a lot about public land and private land, And I would like to have some discussion on sovereign land, patented land, because my family has some. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the next person please step up and identify themselves? It doesn't appear. Is there anybody?
I think
Would
that
the chair please let me know if there's anybody else?
I think that was all for this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Then I will turn it over back to you now. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you all for the input tonight. Certainly lots of important feedback to consider, both as council members as well as our staff. And so we appreciate that participation tonight, and knowing that it is now 7:59 p.m., I will conclude this hearing, and we are adjourned. Thank you once again.